Each conversation brings you wisdom and insight from people serving in ministry, business, education, family life, and more. These are the voices worth listening to, humble leaders who show up, lead well, and make a difference behind the scenes.
What's up, friends? Doug and Ryan here, and we are excited about our guests today. We always have conversations kind of just off the cuff with leaders that we know have faith in God and also who have wisdom to share, not only with us, but with you. And so we're excited to have my friend, my mentor, Wes Holt, all the way from Oregon. Wes, why don't you start off? I think the easiest way, I know you don't know Doug as well as you know me, so share with everybody like from your perspective, because I want to hear your version, how you and I met and kind of how we got where we are here today.
Well, hey, Ryan, thank you so much. And Doug, appreciate the opportunity to be here and just kind of share from our heart. It's just an honor to be here. We're so grateful. Yeah, so Ryan, I got to meet Ryan on a boat, believe it or not. And our wives were connected and we got together, had just had great conversations. And I was in a position where we were going to hike the Grand Canyon the fall of that fall, and I said, Ryan, do you want to go? And he said, sure, I'm in. So that was really fun. We had great conversations in the boat, and part of that was getting to know his heart, getting to know who he was. And I thought this is going to be really fun. And so Ryan just picked up the baton in October. I think it was third last year. We hiked the Grand Canyon rim to rim. So we started at the North Rim. We hiked all the way through down to the river, up on the other side. We did it all in one day. It's about a little over 24 miles, and it was brutal to say the least. And but the connection, the relationship, the watching Ryan prep for that, number one was really fun because we do a little team prep, and then just watching the bonding that happens. I'm going to use the word in adversity because I can give you a couple of fun stories, but one of them is my daughter was hiking with us as well. She's an avid hiker in the Northwest, and she wore her hiking boots and thinking that that was a good move. And she's hiked 18 miles in those hiking boots. And by the time she got to the bottom, which is mile 9, she had blisters underneath her toenails. Everybody had blisters, everybody had something, but hers were the worst. So all of us went through some interesting times, and then the conversations around that night was absolutely precious because we all walked through something that was hard. Um, I remember coming up to the other side, and Ryan was such an encourager, and I was probably 3 miles from the top, and I was tanked out. I mean, literally, um, I didn't have enough oxygen. I didn't have enough energy. I was taking my poles and dragging my little carcass up to the top of the hill. And Ryan and Troy wanted to be there to encourage. And I'm thinking to myself, guys, leave me alone. I want to die on my own. And so they went on ahead as per my instructions. And that way I feel like I wasn't holding them up. But literally looking back, I realized that part of the challenge was not my physical, but it was just as much what I was fueling. Did I have enough electrolytes? Did I have enough water? So learning through that process, and Ryan was there as part of it. And you had some learning experiences too, Ryan. I'd love you just to flip back and just share maybe a recap of that too.
Um, yeah, I mean, it was for me, I'm not an adventurer. I would not say that ever before that I would have said, man, I just love a big adventure. And I actually remember on the cruise, my wife said I was going to do it before I did. I don't know if you remember that. She's like, yeah, he's always wanted to do that. And I was like, really? Have I? I don't recall that conversation. But um, I will say, and this is what a lot we want to talk about today is just I have been inspired by uh yeah, that well, what you just talked about was interesting because we're opposites in that. Like I would want my friends to stay back. Like I want to be around people when I feel like I'm struggling. And you had a different perspective of like you
Mhm.
wanted us to go ahead and you had, which no, neither is right or wrong, right? Because we're just built different. And but it was hard for me to think like, man, why would you want to be alone like in the hardest things? But even in that, we're reminded that you weren't alone.
Mm-mm.
Obviously, with faith in God and through Jesus, you weren't alone. I mean, we were in one of the most majestic pieces of God's creation. He was very present. So I think for me, it was a very spiritual trip. I mean, it was
Mm.
very, very spiritual to be that helpless. I mean, you know, your only way out is a $900 helicopter ride. And I was told by my wife that was not an option. So,
Yeah, I've
like,
heard 15,000 to get out of the canyon. So on the
oh,
helicopter. Yeah.
well, I chat
$900
GPT.
mule ride. But yeah, there's a sign as you begin to enter. It says going down is optional, coming out is not. And we saw a lot of people on the trail that I'm like, I don't know if they're getting out tonight. They're looking pretty rough. So yeah,
Yeah,
it was a great adventure. Just thanks for coming and joining the adventure.
yeah,
That's pretty incredible. I know Ryan has mentioned and talked to me about that, and I've seen his post about it. I do also remember kind of sort of tracking some of the photos that he would post, or maybe they were after, maybe you posted them after Ryan, but you could definitely tell from him what stage he was in the journey of the Grand Canyon. On the face was pretty classic. Uh, I just really wanted to comment, or maybe if you have anything more to say about it, it's great. But I love that like the whole thing started with like your invitation to Ryan West, and maybe it was his
Hmm.
wife that said yes first. But like, man, isn't that the case though? Like some of the best, I guess, adventures, stories we have to tell, experiences really kind of start with that invitation from somebody who maybe has done it already, and so that's pretty incredible. It actually makes me think of uh, I think so I've been a preacher for a lot of my life, and every preacher needs, a marathon story because they can say always, oh, I ran a marathon, which I did one time. But again, for me, it was started with that invitation from a friend that's like, "Oh, you ever thought about running a marathon?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I thought about that." I had never thought about that. I just was wanting to I wanted to please him or something. But he got me through it. So,
Well,
uh,
I think that's a good segue into men as a whole. First of
mm,
all, going back to me wanting to be alone. One of my MOs is I don't like to hold anybody up, and I knew that I was going to be the slow man on the pole. So for me, it was an honor to let them run, knowing that if I got in trouble, they're coming back to get me. They got my back. I had no doubt in my mind. But that being said, is what I've discovered is men do need an invitation. And are you one of the people that are inviting other men into your world? And then here's what I know about men. We don't necessarily, we bond. I don't say we don't necessarily bond by talking. We bond by doing. So what are you doing? What are you involved in? And for those that, either have windshield time, that's a bonding experience. Those that are roofing together on a project, those that are serving others together. That's the bonding experience. Those are our adventure. John Eldredge's book, Wild at Heart, says every man needs an adventure. And I need that. It's been from wakeboarding to surfing to sailing to, doing these hikes. To me, when I'm sailing in a place that I've never sailed before, I feel like, Captain Cook or Christopher Columbus, where I'm just coming around the corner for the very first time. And that really excites me as a man. And then I want to share that with other men. So I think the challenge is, what are you doing? Who are you inviting on your journey? And it doesn't have to be something monumental. It just has to be something for men of action. So that's what I
yes,
was like. Hey, the more the merrier. I just like, let's go. So that's why I invited Ryan because I'm like, I liked him. And I'm like, well, let's do something together.
So touching on that theme that you just set up, which is 100%, like, our wives aren't very involved. You're involved in health coaching, which is a lot about inviting, right, people to optimizing their health and things like that. And one of the reasons I wanted to be mentored by you and coached by you is because you're a season ahead of me, right? You have 10 more years of experience. And I look and go, I want to be like that. I want to be healthy and I want to be able to do that, right? It's inspiring. And maybe you don't realize the power of that, but it's there, right? People are always looking ahead of like that 75-year-old is still doing marathons. How did he get to be able to do that? So when you talk about inviting, can you point back to a moment in your life where a man invited you to do something that started the process of you understanding the importance of inviting others? Like, is there a moment in your life where that was solidified?
Yeah, there's a big moment. I'm going to clarify for those who are listening. I'm 61, not 75. But
I'm just saying.
I know you're teasing, but I'll give you a story. I am a wallflower, introvert. That is the natural wiring. I'm very happy to sit on the sidelines. I'm not the upfront, out front person. That is not my desire. And so I have a friend. I made a friend. His name is Kevin Cameron, and Kevin was at the time he ran a couple of restaurants, went on to become a state representative and now the county commissioner. But we went to an event. He said, "Hey Wes, there's the invite. Hey Wes, I'd love for you and Paula to come to this Salem First Citizen, which is in our town is like who's the citizen of the year." And I'm thinking to myself, that's the last place I want to be because I'm an introvert, right? And it's kind of a social gathering and I can small talk with the best of them, but it doesn't charge my battery. How about that? And so we got there, we sat down at the table, and then Kevin gets up because he's a mystery, he's a connector. That's his gift. And he starts talking to people. He comes over to the table and says, "Wes, have you met?" I'm going to make up a name. "Have you met John?" And I'm like, "No." He said, "Let me introduce you to John." So he introduces me to John. He said, "John, this is Wes. Wes, this is John. Oh, by the way, did you both know that you were in the United States Air Force?" And so John and I got to talking, and Kevin leaves, and I'm thinking, "What in the world are you doing, leaving me alone?" And anyway, so we had a great conversation, John and I, and it was 3 minutes later, Kevin comes back and he said, have you met Carrie? And I'm like, "No." He said, "Well, John, let me introduce Wes to Carrie." He pulls me away from that conversation, puts me in front of this next person, finds the common thing that we have in common so that we begin conversation, and then he leaves me. And he did that like 3 different times. And then we came back and sat down at the table, and I reflected back on that night. And what I reflected on was this: as an introvert, what did Kevin just do for me? He made me seen and he made me comfortable. And I thought to myself, you know what? If he can do that for me, surely I can do that for someone else. I can make them seen and I can make them comfortable. And so I've learned to be an extrovert because why? Because I see somebody on the sidelines and I'm going, I want them engaged because I want them to feel what I felt when Kevin made me seen and made me comfortable. So that was my first inspiration in this making a decision. So when I'm in church and I see somebody there, would I naturally rather park my behind in the pew? But I'm looking for someone who's on the side and looks like they're uncomfortable because I want to make them comfortable. I want to make them feel like they matter. And even though, Ryan, that's not an adventure story, that was my catalyst, my first story.
That's beautiful and powerful. And Wes, you're doing that. That's what you did with me and Tyler, right? If you look back on that, you took a guy, me, who's not an adventurer, and made me feel like it was possible to do one of the hardest things. Would you say less than 1% of people that see the Grand Canyon do that? Or was it
Yeah,
3%?
it's 0.3% do rim
Yeah.
to rim.
So you you gave me the comfortability, the belief in myself that I could do something that most people will never do in their life, and then introduced me to another guy who's, the speed goat, we'll affectionately call him. Uh, we would never have been in the same room together ever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you put us together through adventure, through Christ, and I'm forever absolutely grateful for that. And we want to talk about legacy with you because that's what you're doing, is you're
Mm.
showing, teaching people how to believe in men and build legacy among men. And you obviously know that when men come out of their comfort zones, they change, right? Like guards are
Hmm.
dropped, walls are broken down. So, how do shared hardships, shared experiences build deeper trust and influence in men?
That's a great story. They did a study. So this is the Oxford University did a study of Libyan fighters and Libyan fighters that were fighting against, I think it's Gaddafi. And what they discovered was that as men got together, so it started with two or three guys that were just fighting against this regime. But as they united together and as they went through hardships and as they went through difficulties and even death, what they found is those hardships, adversities, difficulties actually bonded them deeper than their family. And we
Hmm.
know that in the military, for anybody that's been in the military, it's been in, been in combat. The bonds are so deep because of the adversity that you go through together and what you're dealing with together. And so men need that. We need to be pushed because I don't think men choose adversity. I think they're either inspired to it or they're pushed to it. But once they're pushed through it, because we don't naturally choose it, once they're pushed, because usually that's for me, it's a nudge. It might be my wife. I'll just be honest. No, you can do this, and I'm like, I don't want to do this, but all right. You and literally, she's pushed me into more things than I care to think about, and I don't like it at first. I'll just tell you that. But I don't judge anything by what I feel at first. I always judge it by what happens when I finish. And I think if we would do that as men, don't make your decision on how you feel at first. Make your decision of what happens when you hit the finish line, because that is the beauty. I mean, even basic training, I mean, it's not as brutal as it used to be, let's be honest, but there was a lot of crying in the in the dorms at night. There was a lot of Jesus come to meeting. I mean, it was those first few weeks is a tearing down of who you think you are to what really matters. And so that thing that we do together, and it can be a variety. It doesn't have to be outdoor active like I do, but as men, it's like, what are you doing with others that is challenging? It might be I'm volunteering, I'm roofing a roof this weekend for, a couple of my church that doesn't, that can't do it. And like it's going to be hard, it's going to be sweaty, it's going to be gnarly. I mean, that's what happens when we go on mission trips and we're building houses in the Ukraine, or we're building houses in Mexico, or wherever we're going. It's like it's that bonding together, that adversity, and that is just as powerful because guess what happens? We begin to develop family that's deeper than family. There's an old saying that your friends are God's apology for the family that I gave you. And the cool thing is, I got a pretty good family. I can't complain. But the cool thing is the friendships that I develop are literally stronger and more impactful in my life than my immediate family because of the adversity that we went through together. Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Why do you? So Wes, I feel like you are um, ahead of the game, I guess I would say, it's culturally speaking, in terms of when I think about people thinking about legacy. It seems like a lot of people don't think about that until, I don't want to say it's too late, but maybe it's a lot later than when they could have started thinking about it. Do you? Do you have a sense of why that is, or even just your interactions with men, why that is?
This is Wes's take on life, and I don't know if any of it's scientific or not, but um, there is an abduction. Is that the right word? Abdication, I think, is the right word, of the throne or the leadership position. We naturally would say, "Oh, honey, that whatever, that's fine, that's fine." So we've abdicated our responsibility. We've given up the throne as a king or as a leader in our home. And I'm just going to be clarifying. When I say leadership, it's taking responsibility. It's praying over our family. It's not being the boss of everything, but it's providing a space where our family can thrive. I've always said this with my wife. She's more of a leader, driver. If I can if I can create an environment where she can fly, where she feels free to be her, and I can bring out the best in her, I've done my job as a leader. But a lot of the forward thinking, take charge stuff comes out of her because she's a great idea person, and then I'm more that detail. So that abdication of the responsibility is when I started hitting closing in on my 60s, what I realized is that men were coasting. They were just like, oh, you know what? I'm almost in retirement. I'm just going to coast. They coast in their relationships. They coast in their leadership. They coast in their relationship with God. And I know what happens when people coast. They tend to drift and they tend to drift the wrong direction. And so that's the last thing that I wanted was drift. And so challenging myself is how can I encourage other men? Part of me, um, there's a couple of three books resources that I'll share with you, but one of them is John Eldredge's Fathered by God. He talks about the different seasons of life, and the last one's the sage. And and I want to finish well. My dad finished well. My father-in-law finished well. And I want to say, am I going to finish well? Am I going to set that example? So as I was reaching that age, and I did not like it when my dad died. I hated being moved to the top of the food chain. That was probably one of the biggest challenges, but it's my
Uh,
responsibility. And if I don't take that ownership, who will? And so being intentional, and it's hard being intentional with, I've got two sons and a son-in-law. We meet about every couple weeks and just get together and talk about Jesus. We play some games. We like pinochle for cards in the winter, and we like anything from pickleball to to cornhole as an icebreaker. And then we just talk about, what's God doing in your life. And so it's been really, really cool. And I started it 2 years ago and said, did it for, I don't know, like 12, 14 weeks. And then last Christmas I said, hey, we want to do this again. And so they love the bonding that happens in that time frame. But I wanted an opportunity to pour into, I call them my boys, and because they're leaders of their homes, and it's not comfortable, but I did it, and I'm like, okay, here we go. I like it when it was over. So again, measuring that piece. So I think that's the thing for my legacy for me is watching men coast, watching them just abduct their responsibility, abdication. And I'm like, I don't want that. And part of it is realizing that, I'm in the last season of my life. I think it's going to be a great season, but I don't want it to crash and burn. We've worked hard to get this far, and um, we need to finish. We need to finish. I don't want to run the mile and say, well, I ran 3 laps really well and then crash on the
right.
last corner. It's like, no, no, no. That's not for me. That's not for my family. I've seen that too many times, and not on my watch. I can't choose what happens to my kids, and that's their choice. But it's like I'm choosing, I'm choosing life. I challenged some guys that I talked to yesterday. I sent out just a quick text, and I said, what are you, this is about the four areas that I'm looking for when I'm looking for course correction. What am I? And I just said, look, as human beings, we have a choice. As in nature, everything else runs on instinct and survival. And we're the few that get to choose. And the choice is really this: we get to choose life. And so that was my challenge. Who do you worship? Is it you or God? Choose life. What do you, who are you, what are you reading? So that's talked about the healthy mind piece. What are you putting into your mind? What are you putting into your body? And then who are you listening to? That's a little different than reading. And the challenge is, what's the truth? What truth are you listening to? Sometimes you're listening to yourself and you're telling yourself a lie.
Yeah.
I'm working with a guy right now and he has been lying to himself. I'm like, who told you that? Who told you that? And so we've been challenging him in that area of what is the truth, and understanding that when we're battling the battle of the mind as men, um, not everything we think, number one, is true. It doesn't mean it doesn't slide by the radar, doesn't come through between our ears, but the Bible challenges us to take every thought captive. That captivity is like truth or untruth, and eject the untruth, eject the lie, accept the truth. And I know for me, part of my personal growth is, as a younger guy, I had a tendency to be a little more on the depressed side. And I had to realize I have two notes in my Bible specifically. One is, who does God say that he is? And I went through all the Jehovah's and he's my provider. He's my, banner / he's my leader in battle. He goes before me. So it's like declaring those things. Who is God for me? And then who does God say that I am? Right? I'm not trash because he said I'm not trash. And that's the truth. So I believe that. And then so I'm walking through. I have those two little notes and I've shared them with each of my guys, my men, because that is the battlefield we fight. We take every thought captive and then we run it through the filter of truth. And all of a sudden we can have the confidence in Christ that that we need. So a couple of challenges as men. Oh, I just tell you a quick story. This is kind of funny, but Zach and I went to a Oregon Ducks football game, and we were coming back on the shuttle bus to go to the parking lot. And I hear these two guys behind me, and they're talking football as men, and they don't know each other. I can tell from the conversation, but all they're talking about is this quarterback and this coach and this player and that player. And after about 15 minutes of that, I'm thinking, this is the dullest conversation I have ever heard. Because what happened is they did not get below the surface. They don't even know each other's name. They don't know what's going on in their life. They don't know anything that's going on. And I think as that's a safe place up there in that let's
Yeah.
not go below the surface. But part of the reason men don't go below the surface, I feel, is our pride and our ego. Right? Our pride is sometimes we think we're all that in a box of chips. And then if we're not, if we're thinking we're not, then like, I don't want you to know what's going on underneath the hood. Boy, this is bad stuff, and I don't want to look bad. What I've discovered with God, understanding who God says I am, that God does not make junk. I'm fearfully and wonderfully one to stand in awe and wonder. God goes, wow, Ryan, wow, look what I made. Doug, look what I made. That's a perfect guy, just exactly how I designed him. But the other thing is understanding that God makes us with, I'm going to use this word, parts missing, or maybe a little different way. God made us in such a way that we need other people's strengths in our lives to become the best that we can be. And so understanding that I'm fearfully, God looks at Wes and Doug and Ryan and go, wow. Then because, oh, by the way, you need this lady in your life as an example, or we need other guys in our life, because everything I am not, my wife is, or everything like, I remember, I'm making a decision here in the last couple of days. I'm calling some guys in my life. Hey, I need to talk to you about this. Here's what's going on. Here's the full transparency truth. Here's
Mm.
what I'm excited about. Here's what I'm afraid about. Talk me through this. Walk me through this. Help me understand. Am I missing something? Do you have my back? Can you see what I cannot see? Because I realize that even as the way we're designed or built, we can only see what's in front of us, maybe 180 degrees. But my brother, right, my band of brothers, my Iron Man group, and my boys that I have, they see what I cannot see. And if I don't realize that that's their gift to me, that's their strength. It's not that I don't have to know everything. There's my ego or my pride. But if I can let that down, this guy that I'm talking about with capturing the truth, believing the truth, and I challenged him. I'm like, look, you are so full of pride,
Mm.
and and he was like, yeah, you're right. Now, I had to get some deposits in, some emotional deposits in, because I wanted to make sure that it came across in the right way. But part of his getting out of the hole that he's in is realizing what's holding them there. It's the lies that he's believing, and it's his pride to be transparent. It's like, you can be transparent, and let's get out of this stuck track that you're in, and here's how we can do it. So anyway, that's just,
Yeah,
I don't know.
no, that's great. I think that's so well, it's just super inspiring for sure. So thank you for that. And important. I'm really curious. Like it seems like, I mean, you have really, I don't know if work is the right word, but worked towards making sure you are investing in men. I'm really curious whether it's like what you talked about with your sons or with other men. I think one of the like what you said there was really important because I think for guys, like it's hard to just like sit down and then just, go deep, like you said. Like we want to stay on the surface so naturally. So you're doing things, especially with your sons, but maybe with others, activities, or it's the Grand Canyon hikes. Do you have like, I'm just really curious, like on a practical level, do you have
Mhm.
uh like questions that you have like kind of ready in your back pocket when you're meeting with a guy or doing stuff with guys that you like tend to bring out to try to turn that corner to something deeper? Or how do you think about that? How do you, or is it just natural to you? Or yeah.
No, in fact, I remember listening to a guy he was phenomenal. Ryan would know him. His name is Dan Bell. And what I loved about Dan was the way he asked questions. And
Mm.
I'm a knowledge seeker. I like to learn. And I'm like, Dan, is there a book on questions? Is there a book? I just got to know. He goes, he said, no, just practice. And what I discovered as I'm looking for questions. Your reticular activator or whatever they call it. It's like all of a sudden you heard somebody ask a question and go, whoa, that's a good one. That's a good one. And you stuff that in your pocket. Um, one of the things that I do a men's group with leaders once a month, and we're going through a book right now. That is just a conversation piece. My One of the guys is new, and let's just say there's some growth that needs to happen there. And he's asking, well, what chapter are you on? What are we doing? What's going on? And he hasn't learned to open up and be transparent yet. And so he's new. And I said, look, here's all that matters. Uh, when we're sitting around talking, what are you winning at as a man? Where where are you doing well? I want to know where your wins are. Because if you shift all of your stuff on what you're doing bad at, that is not the truth. There's something you're winning at. So I want to know the whole truth and nothing but the truth. What are you winning at, and what are you working on? Those two things. And the last question I want to know is, what's capturing your thoughts right now when you're thinking about stuff? What's capturing your thoughts? And the other one I might ask is, what are you praying for right now? So those are ways to kind of pull in below the surface. um I know one of the comments was, a lot of times there's accountability groups. I personally, I hate those. It feels like you're saying, okay, I need to tell you everything I did bad today. or this past week or this past month, versus saying, this is what I'm working on. This is the place that I'm winning. And this is the thing that, okay, yep, we took 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm doing. Here's how I'm partnering with God. Here's how I'm challenging myself. I want to know what you're working on, because to me, that's personal accountability. And you're just sharing that with the other person versus saying, all right, ask me the questions that I don't want to tell you the answers to. It's like, that sucks. So,
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I love that. I appreciate that. And just the examples of the questions you ask, particularly the where am I winning? Because we do tend to focus on all the negative, like what you just said. We focus on where am I sucking in life? And it just goes there. Or like you said, the accountability questions. I just say I totally agree with you. Not that the intention of them was bad, but I noticed in
right.
past groups that I've been in, yeah, it just becomes rote. Like, oh, did you do this? Did you look at porn? Did you do this? Did you do this? No, yes, no. And it's just kind of like yes or no, instead of questions you're asking really are more process oriented, right? It's not a question of did I sin or have temptation this week? Yeah, I did,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's more a matter of like how am I working on it? How is God working on
Mm-hmm.
it with me? So I love that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, the when all you're talking about is your wins, then you're not transparent. And all of your you're just like, I don't want you to see where I'm not winning. And then when all you're talking about is the bad stuff, like the guy that I'm talking about that I'm working with, it's like, that's not true. That's not all. There are some things you need to work on. Don't get me wrong, but believing all of that you're all of that, it's like, number one, you're God's child, so let's just stop with that. And knowing who you are tells you the direction that you're going. So it's really both. What are you winning at? What are you working on? And that will never stop till the day I die.
How do you see, you talked about watching so many of your friends in the season of life that you're in, like trying to get to retirement, or like feeling like they were at a place of settling and coasting. How do you see legacy in light of like the difference between like managing your family? Because sometimes I'll be honest, that's what I feel like as the leader in my home, that I'm like managing chaos, right? And then it can easily prevent me from leading with purpose. So, like this idea of how can you shift as a man from just keeping peace and consistency and, keeping things running versus like leading with an intentionality, right? Because we don't know what our kids are going to become. We don't know, but there's a difference between keeping them safe, which is what I feel like we try to do, keep them safe in a bubble in youth group versus leading with like real intentionality. So talk more specifically, you've talked a lot about like leading other men, but talk about like with your boys and with your grandkids, how do you lead them instead of just manage? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I would say there are seasons of life where you're just dog paddling just to stay afloat.
Sure.
Uh, so I think understanding that there will be that season. Even in that season, though, your response to situations. I mean, I've got plenty of examples where I screwed up as a dad. Um, I learned to apologize to my kids. That's with my wife's prompting. Again, going back to the strength of your spouse. She never in front of the kids said anything. She would after the fact, she would say, maybe that was a little harsh. What do you think about that? And because I was raised in let's just say it was a German household, and not to pick on the Germans, but I mean the old saying. I won't say it. It's just like, do as I say. You do as I say. Do it now, and there's always repercussions for that if you don't, which is fine. No harm was done in the raising of me, and no harm was done in the raising of my children. So I'm grateful. But going back to your question, Ryan, is being intentional. it's the little things. It's, Paula, I watched her the other day as an intentional example. She sat down on the lawn and just started reading a little book with with the grandkids on, on faith. And number one on for me, one-on-one is, I manage chaos in a group, but I get results one-on-one. That's where the connection happens. Again, taking my grandkid for the ride in my pickup and the windshield time that we get, then I get to share and ask questions. Well, tell me, what do tell me about Jesus. What do you think about that? Well, tell me what you learned in Sunday school. And, so I think it's just being intention to get the one-on-one for me, because I don't manage well. And when all six grandkids are over, it's controlled chaos, let's be honest. So I think there's that. And then there's that season as they're growing. Part of it I remember as a 25 years old, I'm laying in a cot in Saudi Arabia in the middle of Desert Storm. And I'm thinking about my parents and thinking all the things they did that were what they know, like they're just a bunch of losers. They didn't do X, Y, Z. And God took me to the woodshed that day at 25, and he said, "Look how your parents were raised and look how far they've come." And when I did that, I thought, oh my gosh, considering the example that they had set for them, and considering how they had grown themselves to the best of their abilities, they made light years of progress. And so that was my aha moment at 25. And that was also a moment when I think our kids begin to realize, oh, mom and dad aren't that stupid. Sometimes it takes them to 30. Guys are a little slower, let's be honest. But I think as our children age, Ryan, we're going to see those opportunities. That's where the doors are starting to open up, and my kids actually like me now, and they actually talk to me now because I'm just a guy. That's why I told them when we got together for my boys. I said, look, if we're going to do this together, I'm not leading this. This is just us sitting around the campfire talking. That's it. And oh, by the way, sitting around a campfire is a great way because you got the fire. It's like that was one of the things I wanted: conversation, campfire, cooking. These are three, and a little bit of competition. Those are the four things that I wanted with my boys, because
And
I knew sitting around the campfire is cool. Yeah.
they all start with the letter C.
Yeah. There you go.
Look at you, Pastor.
So I think that's look at your seasons, Ryan. There's chaos. Then there's how do I get one-on-one? Paula's really good, and we've done this with our kids and grandkids. When they come to spend the night, we're in there praying for them, praying with them for their nighttime prayers. Great conversations when they don't want to go to sleep and they're willing to listen. So you just got to find the nook that is where they're ready and open.
Who's mentoring you?
That's a great question. I've got, that's a great question. I can tell you that my band of brothers, my Iron Man, is more of a round table. It's more of a King Arthur table, because I don't feel like I'm all that. I feel like I'm just an average guy, just creating a space for people that don't want to stay stuck and people that want to finish well. And so I've got a dozen guys in my life. We meet once a month. Um, I'm very intentional about this, by the way. Someone asked me about how do you stay connected. There's a great book. It's one of my favorite books. It's called The Like Switch, Like, Like Switch. And it's really about how do you stay connected. It's a FBI agent that learned how to turn, let's use the word, Russians into spies for the US. So for a man, it's a fascinating book, but it's a great lesson on relationships. And his comment was, how do we stay connected? Number one, we get in the room. That's proximity. How do we get in the room? So when do we plan to get together? Number two is how frequent do we get in the room? So there's proximity, there's frequency. So not only do I like to connect with my guys once a month, but I'm usually calling them at least once or twice a month. There is duration. How long do we stay in the room? And then there is depth of conversation. If you can get all four of those, then there is stickiness in relationships. You stay together. You think about your marriage, same thing. I'm in the room, frequency every day, right? Proximity, frequency, yeah, I'm in the room. Yeah, I'm there every day. Yeah, we stay that we're there at night. But if we're missing the depth of conversation, guess what? There's disconnection. And so I think that's as with guys. My friend, my brother, I don't have a brother, but I have a cousin who is my brother. Um, he was talking about relationships, and he was talking about his brother. And he said, yeah, Mike says he's got friends. He said, but I went up there to visit him. He said, I went over and met his friend. He said, they haven't talked for at least 3 weeks. That's no friend. And I
Yeah.
thought, oh my gosh, that's such a reminder of how connection happens. And Bill is a pro at connecting with people. And he is 45 miles from town on the ranch. So he has to be very intentional, but he really taught me a lot about how to stay connected.
Wow. That's really good. I appreciate that recommendation too. That sounds like a very
It's a great book.
practical. Yeah, yeah. I love
He
that.
was he was also saying, just again, just side note, but he said, so, why are popular people are popular? It's not because they're cool, but it's because they give off signals, Asia in their face of, hey, I'm open for conversation. They have a twinkle in the eye, they have a little smile in their heart. They have it's for people that have a sad resting face, and there are people that when they're not smiling, they don't look happy. Well, that's sending off, you got to realize, oh, that's a negative signal. So I have to work extra hard at sending off the right signal to say, nope, welcome. The door's open for conversation here. And so that's another one. I have a friend that has a sad resting face, and you just look, it's what I got, but I can change that. I got tools.
Yeah,
So anyway, there you go.
yeah. That's great. No, I mean, it's just super practical too. That's what I love. Like it's super actionable.
Hmm.
So what do you as we're kind of landing the plane, if you will, we always like to ask this one kind of final question. It's easy. It's not like it's a challenging one, but what are you reading and what are you watching and what are you listening to?
So on a pleasure side, reading, Undaunting Courage. It's Stephen Ambrose. It's Lewis and Clark. Fantastic book. It's thick, so if you're not a reader, you probably won't like it. But if you're a lover of history and understanding the challenges, you get the history lesson in high school. It sounds like things are great, but when you see the rubber meets the road stuff, and you go, "Oh my gosh, these guys were men." That one of the comments was they had backs of steel and they had fortitude. So anyway, great book. Danny Silk's book, The Way of the Dragon Slayer, that is a phenomenal book. It's relatively new. I'm working through that with my Ironman group. The boys group, we're reading Unoffendable. I have a couple of my boys that, are easily offended, and just shifting their perspective. Could someone else actually think differently than me? Just because they cut me off, were they trying to be mean? Or maybe they were distracted, that kind of stuff. So it's really good. Um, I love Brian Tome's book, The Five Marks of a Man, if you haven't read that. And then Fathered by God is probably my go-to when it helps me understand the seasons of men. Um, what am I watching? Usually I'm watching something on the Grand Canyon, or I'm a YouTuber because I'm looking for keys for adventure. I mean, we just started riding. I've ridden street bike for several years, but just started doing some off-road biking, road motorcycling, and so I'm working on my skills. And so that's what I'm watching. Listening music, love music. There's just some great worship out there right now. I can't pull some stuff, but who else? I think is the name of the title. Is talking about who else could save us, and it's a phenomenal worship song. Um, yeah, reading, watching, listening to. I love Andy Stanley. He's probably thinks a little outside the box, is really practical for me personally. So if I'm looking for that, and then there's always personal development stuff that I like, Ed Milet, and I like some Craig Groeschel personal development stuff. So yeah.
That's great. Those are great recommendations. Thank you for that. Well, we appreciate so much take you taking the time. I'd actually want to, before we kind of end it, if you would, would you issue a challenge for particularly any man that would be watching, like, and maybe it's like, what could you do over the next 30 days that would make a significant difference for your life as a man?
I think the first thing I would challenge you to do is invite another man into your life.
Mm,
Um, that's pretty easy, and a lot of guys do coffee. It's For me, we got to do something. We got to go for a walk. We got to do some kind of action. I don't care if you play pickleball or cornhole or you don't do any of that stuff. You do something. What is it? And who do you know that you could invite to see if they might be interested in the thing that you do? Shooting's a big thing out here, pistols, that kind of thing. So I would say, who's the man you're going to invite into your life? And that's number one. And then I think the biggest thing for me in men's life is, who does God say that I am? I just worked through all the Jehovah's, Jireh, Rapha, Nisei. Who is God to me? And then going through scripture and pulling 10 or 12 verses of this is who God says I am. Who is he? Who am I? And realizing that, you know what, I have value. I'm here for this time and for this place in history. God did not make a mistake where he put me. I wished I would have been 1860, frankly, just right after the Civil War. I mean, I'm a cowboy at heart as a Montana kid, but God chose right now. So what am I doing with right now versus complaining about what I didn't get? Quit being a whiner and saying, where am I at now? Why did God put me here? He's got a purpose. Suck it up and get engaged in your family, your brothers, and with God. So that's my challenge. Who are you going to bring into your life? And who does God say that he is? And who does he say I am?